Yesterday, a House panel, interesting timing, of course, a House panel voted to cut Amtrak's budget by about 15%. That vote was scheduled before the horrific train derailment in Philadelphia, of course. But Democrats roundly criticized Republicans, though, for the move.
Yeah, roundly is a euphemism there, sharply and directly. And one of the Democrats specifically who did was Congressman Steve Israel from New York. He joins us now. Congressman, what's your criticism of that vote specifically?
Well, my criticism is that it reflects a recklessness by Republicans in their budgets. Instead of investing in the safety of our passengers on Amtrak, in refurbishing our highways, in reinvesting in air traffic, Republicans have decided to divest from that infrastructure in order to pass a repeal of the estate tax costing $269 billion and helping a bunch of billionaires. That's just wrong and reckless priorities, and we saw it in the Appropriations Committee yesterday.
When you talk about it being reckless and reckless priorities, I mean, there is a definite debate to be had, Congressman, about crumbling infrastructure in the country. That's been going on for quite some time. But directly relating to this crash, how are you saying that a lack of funding is directly related to this crash that we're talking about in Philadelphia?
There are three components to a modern infrastructure. One is training of personnel. The second is operations and maintenance. And the third is modernization. We are 0 for 3 under the Republican majority. They have plowed every penny they could into handouts and subsidies for the rich, and they have completely cut back on subsidies for people getting on trains, planes, and automobiles. And it's beyond this accident. We have 53,000 bridges in this country that are falling apart. We've got 78,000 miles of roadway in this country that the federal government says are deficient. And if you get on an airplane at Reagan National Airport trying to go to LaGuardia Airport, chances are you're going to be late because of air traffic infrastructure problems. So we have to make an investment again in that infrastructure.
There's criticism that Amtrak, when it gets money, doesn't spend it well. And obviously one of the real issues here is positive train control. The NTSB says, frankly, if it was on that stretch of tracks, this train would not have crashed. There has been funding for positive train control. A lot of track has it. This stretch doesn't because it hasn't been laid out yet. So is it an issue of money or is it an issue of management?
It's an issue of both. You've got to have good management to make the right investments, but you've got to have the investments so that management can deploy. In the case of positive train control, some of that route has been covered. Some of the route has not been covered. The fact of the matter is Congress mandated positive train control but didn't fully pay the bill. Now, yesterday, the Appropriations Subcommittee, we tried to correct that within 24 hours of this accident, which most likely would have been prevented with positive train control. We offered an amendment to fund positive train control, and even then, even with all that happened, Republicans stuck with their ideology, and every single one voted against additional investments in positive train control. Why? Because they needed the money to repeal the estate tax for a bunch of billionaires.
Well, Congressman, obviously that's getting into some of the politics that a lot of folks are saying are at play. Republicans say there are a lot of other priorities they need to fund, not just the one that you're laying out right there. But on the issue of positive train control, I think it's very important. There's a really important question that you've laid out. Why this section of track didn't have it installed when other sections of the Northeast Corridor, Amtrak has been aggressive to try to install it? Is Congress's role of kind of oversight of the Amtrak system? Why, Congressman, do you think, do you have any idea at this moment why this section of track doesn't have positive train control already installed?
We have heard some initial responses from Amtrak that aren't satisfactory. One has been that they received the mandate to install the technology, but they didn't have enough money to install it for the entire route. We need a full audit to find out why PTC was in some areas and not in other areas, such as the one where this accident happened. But we also have a responsibility as government to ensure the safety of passengers and to ensure safe infrastructure. And we could have done that by funding positive train control, by making investments in infrastructure. Instead,
what do you say to your fellow Democrats who want to push the deadline back to 2020 now?
I don't think the issue is the deadline. I think the issue is the investment. You know, we can figure out the timing. We can figure out how to make sure there's proper management. But the Amtrak budget was $1.5 billion under the president's request. The Republican budget for Amtrak, $1.5 billion under, $250 million under last year's levels. So to say to Amtrak, you need to install positive train control throughout every mile of track, but we're not going to give you the money because we've got to pay for some other things like special interests, that's the big part of the problem.
Congressman Steve Israel from New York, thanks so much for being with us. Appreciate your time, sir.
Thanks.